the Leafs, Rosie, have themselves a third string netminder. Martin Jones, a 1-year deal, $875K, played last season with Seattle. I know this sternly because I watch Kraken games and I had him in fantasy hockey. He wasn't great. The numbers look fantastic. 27, 13, and 3 maybe speaks to how good that Kraken team was. But a 2.95, an 887, 3 shutouts. But obviously the plan is for Jones to somehow find his way to the AHL. And I say somehow, I just don't think he's going to make it through waivers. So to me, it's a paper transaction. I just don't know how he makes it through waivers, assuming that it's going to be Samsonov and Woll to start the year.
Yeah, we'll see, I guess. I mean, to pick a guy up on waivers, it doesn't happen all the time. Goalies are different. They're
Mhm.
they're more sought after, and it just depends what team and what time of year they do it. I know they time waivers at a certain time when there's just a load of guys going down after
Yeah.
training camp and people are still trying to figure out what they're doing. Maybe someone does it they do it earlier than most so that people are still trying to figure out what they need and he slips through the cracks. Again, we'll see what happens. He's probably gonna have to go through reentry waivers as well to come back up, which is a half price thing. If it's still the way it used to be, should brush up on that. But at the end of the day, they want a goalie with some experience. They want somebody who's, got some games behind him. Last year, if you remember, throughout the fall, they're leaning heavily on Eric Shalgren. And I mean, that is not a position a team that, considers themselves a Stanley Cup contender wants to be in, albeit Chalgren showed up and played very well and kept them in the mix, got them some wins and kept them, where they needed to be throughout the injuries that their goaltenders had early in the season last year. But ultimately, you don't want to put yourself in the position where you're leaning on a young kid with no experience to keep you in there when you're trying to win a division and put yourself in position. I mean, November, December, that can shoot a team in the foot, and you can be, behind the 8 ball and just swimming upstream trying to get yourself back in position after that. So I think they're just trying to prevent themselves from being in that position again. But something that I think about is what about Eric Shalgren, like a guy that has done everything they've asked for, wants to be that third string guy, got thrown into the fire last year, produced, showed that he could handle it, and then boom, they just signed this guy to kind of bump him down the depth chart even more. Something that people don't really think about when these moves happen is what happens to that guy and what's his state of mind right now.
Yeah, and you gotta think of it from Shalgren's department too, like what he wants for his career. But I think without question, you want to find a way to formulate depth when it comes to the crease, right? And that's what they're thinking here. We talked about this a month ago with Brian Elliott, right? Like it went without saying they need to add at least one more guy. I think you look around the league, and I think the Leafs are a perfect example of this in recent memory. Like it brings me back to 2020. I know it was a different time, obviously, with COVID. You needed like a billion guys just to be able to play. But Aaron Dell was a guy who had some NHL experience. They signed him, didn't end up playing a game for the Maple Leafs because he was plucked off waivers. And as we've seen a lot through the last 5, 6, 7 years, it seems like any Leaf that goes through waivers, they get claimed just because they're Toronto Maple Leafs. But I think you make a good point. Like, I think they're going to try their hardest to sneak Martin Jones through waivers. Maybe that's a move that you make a week into training camp and and he knows that he's likely to play some games. I mean, find me a tandem that's played, combined to play all 82 games. Like I think it goes without saying they're going to need at least a third guy to make this work this season. So maybe that's how it works. But I thought it was a cheeky little pickup. I have my reservations if he's actually going to be a Maple Leaf after, say, the drop of the puck in the first game of the season. Just more so because we know how many teams out there always looking for depth in between the pipes.